No extraterrestrial would rescue the young Delios girl, screaming for her life beneath the rubble, blood pooling under her mangled body. Bombs exploded and guns blazed just meters away, while distant laser fire and plasma blasts illuminated the smoke-filled sky. Xena, the pale blue Zorg child, coughed up dark purple blood, tears streaming down her dirt-caked face. Droz, Alderaan, and Korth warriors sprinted past, boots pounding and tails lashing. AK-armored Korth mercenary stomped over, his quad-pupil red eyes glaring as he raised his plasma rifle. Xena froze, too weak to scream. The mercenary's scaly claw touched the trigger, but he sneered, shook his crested head, and marched on, leaving Xena to bleed out slowly, alone. As darkness crept in, Xena prayed to the cosmic serpent for a miracle, for anyone to save her. But in this hellish war between the Zorg Confederacy and the Alder Alliance, who could possibly care about one insignificant alien child? Xena's weak whimpers pierced through the cacophony of war. Sergeant Jack Thompson, a grizzled human combat medic with the Earth Alliance's peacekeeping force, snapped his head toward the sound. He saw the young Droz girl trapped, her life force ebbing away with each labored breath. Jack's heart clenched. He couldn't just leave her to die. Sprinting over, Jack skidded to his knees beside Xena. He quickly assessed the rubble pinning her broken body and, with precise movements, extracted the child, doing his best not to jolt her injuries. Xena let out a pained cry as Jack finally pulled her free, cradling her in his arms. "I've got you, kid. You're going to be okay," Jack murmured, his voice soothing despite the tremor of worry. He did a rapid triage, noting Xena's mangled legs, the jagged shrapnel embedded in her abdomen, her shattered rib cage. He pulled a medkit from his belt and got to work biofoam to seal the punctures in her lungs, pressure bandages to stem the bleeding, a shot of fast-acting painkillers and antibiotics. "Ramirez, I need a medevac now," Jack shouted into his comm link over the sound of explosions. "I've got a critically wounded Droz child. She needs surgery." "Negative," Thompson came the terse reply from his co. "We have strict orders not to intervene. Leave the kid and get back to your post." "Screw that," Jack snarled. "I'm not letting her die." He cut the link and scooped Xena up, holding her close to his chest. Her breaths were getting shallower, more rapid. She didn't have much time. The nearest Earth Alliance FOB was 3 clicks east through the heart of the battle-torn city. Jack knew he'd be court-martialed for this, but he didn't care. He had sworn an oath to protect the innocent, to value all life. He wasn't about to betray that now. "Hang on, sweetheart," Jack whispered to the barely conscious girl in his arms. "I'm getting you out of here. You're going to live. You hear me? You're going to live." With Xena held securely against his chest, Jack rose to his feet and began to run, heading east directly toward the sounds of fighting. Plasma fire and explosions lit up the ruined cityscape. Hostile forces could be lurking anywhere, but Jack's focus was solely on the fading child he carried, her life now in his hands. Jack's boots pounded against the rubble-strewn street as he ran, Xena's limp form cradled close to his chest. The sound of distant explosions and gunfire echoed through the abandoned buildings, a constant reminder of the danger that surrounded them. Jack's eyes darted from side to side, scanning for any signs of trouble. A sudden burst of plasma fire erupted from a nearby alley, forcing Jack to duck behind a crumbling wall. He pressed his back against the rough concrete, his heart racing as he checked on Xena. The girl's breathing was shallow, her eyes fluttering weakly. "Stay with me, kid," Jack whispered, adjusting his grip on her small body. "We're almost there." With a deep breath, Jack peered around the corner, spotting a group of Alorian soldiers moving down the street. He waited until they passed, then bolted from his hiding spot, keeping low and fast. As they neared an intersection, a high-pitched whistle filled the air. Jack's eyes widened. Artillery. He sprinted forward, diving into a nearby doorway just as the shell exploded behind them, showering the street with shrapnel and debris. Ears ringing, Jack looked down at Xena, relieved to see her still breathing. He brushed a strand of hair from her face, his heart clenching at the sight of her pain. A feeble cry caught Jack's attention. He turned to see a group of Droz civilians huddled in the corner of the ruined building, their bodies battered and bleeding. Among them, a female Zorg with the same pale blue skin as Xena reached out a trembling hand. "Please," she rasped, her voice thick with desperation. "Please take my daughter. Get her to safety." Jack hesitated, torn between his duty to Xena and his instinct to help the other survivors. He looked down at the girl in his arms, then back at the pleading mother. I can't leave her, but I'll get help." I promise. He carefully set Xena down, propping her against a wall. Then he pulled out his comm link and switched to an emergency frequency. This is Sergeant Thompson requesting immediate medevac at my location. Multiple civilian casualties, critical condition. Need a full rescue team now. A burst of static, then a response. Copy that, Sergeant. Birds are in the air. ETA 7 minutes. Jack let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. He turned back to the drone's mother, placing a hand on her shoulder. Help is coming. Just hold on a little longer. The mother nodded, tears streaming down her face. Thank you. Thank you. Jack gave her a tight smile, then gathered Xena back into his arms. With a final nod to the civilians, he set off once more, picking his way through the war-torn street. You hear that, kid? Jack murmured to Xena, his voice low and soothing. Your mom's going to be okay, and so are you. I'm going to make sure of it. Xena stirred slightly, her eyes fluttering open. Jack's heart leaped. He smiled down at her, trying to keep his expression calm and reassuring. Hey there, tough girl. You're doing great. Just hang in there. Hurts, Xena whimpered, her voice barely audible. I know, sweetheart, I know, but you're going to be all right. You want to hear a story? Xena managed a small nod, her gaze locked on Jack's face. All right. Let me tell you about my home. It's a place called Earth, and it's the most beautiful planet you've ever seen. As Jack wove tales of blue oceans, green forests, and soaring mountains, he felt Xena relax slightly in his arms. He kept talking, his voice a lifeline tethering her to consciousness, to hope. Step by step, through the chaos and destruction, Jack carried Xena toward safety, toward a future where a human soldier and a young Droz girl could forge an unbreakable bond amidst the horrors of war. As the Earth Alliance base's reinforced gates came into view, Jack felt a wave of relief wash over him. The journey had been harrowing, each step fraught with danger, but they had made it. Xena, still cradled in his arms, had drifted into a fitful unconsciousness, her breath shallow and rapid. The guards at the gate snapped to attention as Jack approached, their eyes widening at the sight of the wounded Droz child. They waved him through without hesitation, urgency etched on their faces. Inside the base, a flurry of activity erupted. Medics rushed forward, carefully transferring Xena onto a hovering gurney. Doctor. Amir Singh, the base's chief medical officer, was at the forefront, his dark eyes focused and determined. Get her to the or now, doctor. Singh barked, his voice cutting through the chaos. He turned to Jack, placing a firm hand on his shoulder. You did well, Sergeant. We'll take it from here. Jack nodded, his throat tight as he watched Xena disappear into the medical facility. The adrenaline that had sustained him throughout their journey began to ebb, replaced by a bone-deep exhaustion. Sergeant Thompson. A stern voice rang out. Jack turned to see Captain Ethan Reeves striding toward him, his expression a mix of relief and disapproval. The base commander was a tall, broad-shouldered man with a neatly trimmed beard and piercing blue eyes. What the hell were you thinking, disobeying a direct order like that? Captain Reeves demanded, his brow furrowed. You could have gotten yourself killed out there. Jack straightened his spine, meeting the captain's gaze head-on. With all due respect, sir, I couldn't just leave her to die. She's a child, an innocent caught in the middle of this damn war. Captain Reeves sighed, rubbing a hand over his face. I understand your intentions, Sergeant, but you know the rules. We can't risk our own people for the sake of a single alien, no matter how young or innocent. Then what's the point of us being here, sir? Jack asked, his voice rising. What's the point of calling ourselves peacekeepers if we can't even protect the most vulnerable? The captain held up a hand, silencing Jack's outburst. I hear you, Thompson, but you have to understand the position you've put me in. I can't just let this slide. Jack nodded, his shoulders sagging. He knew there would be consequences for his actions, but he couldn't bring himself to regret them. Here's what's going to happen, Captain Reeves said, his tone measured. You have two options. You can accept a demotion and reassignment to a non-combat role effective immediately, or you can face a court-martial and potentially be discharged from the Earth Alliance military altogether. Jack swallowed hard, the weight of the decision settling on his shoulders. He thought of Xena, fighting for her life in the operating room, and of the countless other children caught in the crossfire of this senseless war. I'll take the demotion, Sir Jack said, his voice steady. But I want to request permission to stay with the girl, at least until she's out of danger. She trusts me, and I don't want her to wake up alone in a strange place. Captain Reeves considered for a moment, then nodded. Very well, Sergeant. You can stay with her for now, but once she's stable, you'll report for your new assignment. Understood? Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. As the captain walked away, Jack let out a long breath. He knew his decision would have far-reaching consequences, but he couldn't find it in himself to regret it, not when he remembered the weight of Xena in his arms, her life hanging by a thread. He turned and headed toward the medical facility, ready to keep vigil over the young Droz girl who had become his responsibility, his mission. No matter what the future held, Jack knew he would always be there for Xena, a guardian and a friend in a galaxy torn apart by war. As the days passed, Xena's condition improved under the watchful care of Dr. Singh and the human medical team. The advanced technology and expertise of the Earth Alliance doctors worked wonders, mending her broken bones and healing her wounds. The young Droz girl, once on the brink of death, now smiled and laughed as she interacted with the staff, her resilience and spirit a beacon of hope amidst the chaos of war. Word of Jack's heroic actions quickly spread among the Droz people. The tale of a human soldier risking his life to save a young alien girl resonated deeply with a population tired of conflict and bloodshed. Xena became a symbol of the compassion and unity that could exist between humans and Droz, a reminder that even in the darkest of times, there was still room for hope and kindness. Inspired by Jack's selflessness, more and more humans and Droz began to reach out to one another, putting aside their differences and working together to end the war. Soldiers from both sides laid down their weapons, joining forces to provide aid and support to the countless civilians caught in the crossfire. Diplomats and leaders, moved by the groundswell of unity, redoubled their efforts to find a peaceful resolution to the conflict. Jack, having accepted his demotion, found himself with more time to spend at Xena's bedside. The bond they had forged during their perilous journey only grew stronger as they shared stories and laughter, the horrors of war momentarily forgotten. Xena, her eyes bright and her smile wide, listened with rapt attention as Jack told her more about Earth and the wonders it held. I want to see it someday, Xena said, her voice filled with longing. Your home with the blue oceans and green forests. It sounds like a dream. Jack smiled, taking her small hand in his. You will, Xena. When you're all better, I promise I'll take you there. You can meet my family, see the places I've told you about. Xena's face lit up, her joy palpable. She reached under her pillow, pulling out a small, intricately carved wooden charm. Here, she said, pressing it into Jack's hand. This is for you. It's a Droz good luck charm to keep you safe and remind you of me. Jack felt tears prick at the corners of his eyes as he accepted the gift. Thank you, Xena. I'll treasure it always. As the war finally came to an end, with the Earth Alliance and the Droz Confederation signing a historic peace treaty, Jack knew it was time to say goodbye. He stood at Xena's bedside, the young girl now strong enough to sit up on her own, her injuries nearly healed. I have to go now, Xena, Jack said softly, his heart heavy. But I want you to know that I'll never forget you or the courage and strength you've shown. Xena nodded, her own eyes glistening with tears. I won't forget you either, Jack. You saved my life and showed me that there's still good in the universe. They embraced, holding each other tight, the bond between them unbreakable. As Jack walked away, Xena's good luck charm clutched in his hand. He knew that his life had been forever changed by the brave little Droz girl who had taught him the true meaning of heroism. Years later, Jack stood before a new group of Earth Alliance recruits, his uniform bearing the insignia of a medical instructor. He held up Xena's good luck charm, the wood worn smooth by time and countless touches. This, he said, his voice clear and strong, is a reminder of why we're here. Not to fight wars, but to protect the innocent, to bring hope and healing to those who need it most. It's a reminder that compassion and unity are the most powerful weapons we have, and that even in the darkest of times, a single act of kindness can change the course of history. As the recruits listened, their eyes wide with wonder and admiration, Jack knew that Xena's story would live on, inspiring generations to come. And somewhere out there, on a distant planet, a young Droz girl with pale blue skin and a heart full of courage smiled, knowing that her friend, her savior, would always be with her, no matter the distance between them.